right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Kurt Lingle, and I'm the Vice President and a partner at Celtic. We are a full-service advertising agency headquartered right here in Milwaukee's historic Third Ward. And we wanted to start this meeting today, or this event, by sharing a quick quote. And don't worry, I'm not going to share a lot of quotes, but I thought this one was pretty fitting. And it comes from Mike Tyson, or at least I think it came from Mike Tyson. And it said, everyone has a game plan until they get punched in the mouth. And I think that's pretty fitting, because I think that's really what a lot of us feel like these days, that, you know, we've been punched in the mouth due to COVID, whether it's from a health perspective, economical, and even with what we're going to talk about today from a marketing and advertising perspective, it's hit us as well, too. And we have been getting a lot of calls and emails from clients and friends of our agency over the last few weeks, month, just saying how unsure they are about what's going on right now. What is it that we do? How do we approach the coming weeks, the months ahead, given the fact that COVID has just, again, sucker punched us in the face? And while there really are no easy answers, the good news is that there are some answers and there is advice that we can give. So what we decided to do is field and collect some questions and share that with you today. So I'm joined here today by my business partner and the president of Celtic, Brian Meehan, as well as Pat McGovern, who heads up business development for Ascedia, which is a digital consulting firm located right down the street, I think it's that way, from Celtic here in the Third Ward. And some history real quickly. Ascedia and Celtic, it's kind of cool. There's a history and a relationship here that goes back almost 25 years, really. We both come to the table providing different disciplines, and over the years we've had a chance to work on some great brands together and do some really cool work as each kind of brings their own perspective and strengths to the table. So we've done some great things together. So Brian and Pat are here today to answer some of these questions, maybe shed some light on some things that have been on your mind, and we'll kind of go from there. So I just want to start off by saying, Brian and Pat, welcome.
Thank you.
Great. This is great. I'm loving this.
So what we're going to do is we're going to jump right into it. And we did kind of receive some questions from folks that we know. And we'll kind of read some of those to you and let you kind of just hear what some of the folks here, Brian and Pat, have to say. And the first question that we got is one that's been asked a number of different ways, really. It seems like it's on everyone's mind. But the question is, you know, as my company looks to distribute marketing funds, what should I be thinking about? And really, the second point of that is, should I be cutting all together and going dark? And I guess, Brian, let me start by going to you. What would you say to a brand that's thinking about just, you know what, hiding under the bed and just going dark?
The number one question I've been getting, especially early on in this process when COVID first started to hit, let me tell you, people got scared. And when you're scared, you pump the brakes. And what we were really trying to encourage with our clients is you got to stay active. Now, does that mean you maybe need to scale back a little bit of your marketing plan because of uncertainty? Okay, that makes sense, but you got to stay out there. You know, the big term we were using is do not go dark. What we've learned from other instances like this, like 08-09 recession and 9/11, is the brands that stayed active and the brands that were out there supporting people bounced back. And the ones that didn't invest and kind of were on the sidelines, it took them far longer to kind of spool up. So what we were just telling people is stay active. But from a branding perspective, when the COVID hit, I think it was also important to say, listen, we may have to change our messaging. Instead of an overt sales message, we probably want to take more of an empathetic tone. You know, more of a branding message of we're here for you, we care about you, and we're going to be here, and we're going to get through this. That happened very quickly. I'm sure you've all seen the TV commercials every night. They all take that kind of tone. But let me tell you this before I pass it to Pat. It's going to pivot quick. And I'm starting to see it already with articles that I'm reading, that kind of, you know, we're here for you, let's stay home, is quickly going to shift to let's roll. Let's get back out there. And I think there's pent up demand. I really do. When you talk to people, they're like, I want to go out to a restaurant, you know, and I want to go take a trip. And we need to order from the manufacturing plant up the road that we haven't ordered from for a long time. So I think when we get out of this, you know, you're going to see a lot of interest out there. So good question. That's probably the biggest question I keep getting.
Yeah, I guess, you know, let's go with that for a second. You talked about message, Brian, and it's interesting. Had we been asked a few weeks ago, the question might have been, how do I take my brand selling message and move it to more of an empathetic and softer message, as you kind of alluded to? And I think, seeing how things change so quickly, 2-3 weeks later, now the question might be, how do I move back to a selling message? Pat, the question I have for you, and really it's a question we just received. So having said that, what advice would you give to a brand right now that, they want to be ready to hit the ground running when we get back to business as usual, whatever that might be? Because we're kind of seeing, indications that we have to be ready. What kind of advice would you give? Because that's a question we're also getting. What do I do now to get ready and hit the ground running? I don't want to be falling behind.
And that's a great question as well. And so what I have been telling people and what I've been writing about in speaking with friends and so forth is if we could assume that about the 15th of April was the peak, right? Now you could go a little bit before or after, but let's just assume for the sake of our conversation right now that the 15th of April was the peak. That means we hit a turning point. Mm-hmm. I am no way saying we're out of the woods. I'm no way saying we're back. But it is a turning point. That means things are starting to flatten out, and you could start seeing this more and more happening. States are starting to say, hey, we're loosening up. We're starting to go. So we have to buy into that fact right now. If you buy into that, then what I would be doing and what I've been talking about is starting to look at small segments of time. What do I need to do within the next 30 days to prepare, right? That may include my messaging. That may include getting my supplies ready. That may include connecting vendors, right? What do I have to do then in the next 60 days to be ready, in the next 90 days? So let's eat the elephant one bite at a time rather than look out going, holy cow, where do I even begin? Because the whole world is going to be changing. Break it down into little bite-sized pieces, which obviously are going to vary depending on what category that you're in.
Mm.
Just to follow up on that, we're starting to have conversations with clients that are thinking about that next phase. And again, don't know when we're all back, what the world's, but they're already having conversations with us because they want to be the first out of the gate. I mean, think about it. Once we're all let out into the wild and we're free again, people are going to go to places that they're familiar with. And they're going to order products from companies that they're comfortable with and have heard of. So a lot of our clients are saying, we know we may be a month out, 2 months out, 3 months out, but we want to be ready for it. So if I could just create that sense of urgency with people to say, stop thinking about just the here and now and where we are as of today. Think again, Pat, great, 30, 60, 90, and get prepared.
So let me play off of that, because I heard something really interesting today. It was part of a webinar with information from Kantar, and it was talking about innovation during this time. And it's almost equivalent to your comments earlier, Brian, about messaging. They had some data saying that companies that were innovative and had begun to invest in innovation and changing things during downtimes had a much bigger bounce, right? Yep. And so keep that in mind. The second thing too is the pace of innovation is people are going to be demanding so much more. Here's what I thought was super interesting about this. Look at how fast we all just emerged into our house. Look how fast we picked up Zoom, how fast we picked up online grocery shopping, how fast we started making masks at home. That's all innovation. That's on a cottage level, but it's innovation. We're going to take that as a society and say, company X, why can't you do this faster? Why can't you be moving on this? So if I'm at a company right now, you got to be thinking about when the green light goes on. If I just start working, then race is over. Race is over.
Yeah, great point.
It's a great point. Well, Pat, let me stick on you for a second, because we talked a little bit about messaging. How there's been a lot of questions about how do we pivot from a brand sell message to more of an empathetic, and now obviously we want to start shifting back because at the end of the day we need to sell our products.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the channel a little bit, because obviously one of the things we're always talking about is you've got the message, but you also have the channel, which is every bit as important. So we are also hearing from clients, and we've had a couple questions already too, where it's like how does that affect the mediums, the different mediums I'm in, and I'll take it one step further. Let's look at the digital and web world. Your expertise, your area. It's no secret we're seeing that push right now. It's going in that direction now more than ever. It has been.
Yep.
But from a web and digital perspective, how has COVID changed the prioritization or role that that web is playing right now in digital in your eyes and the conversations you're having? What are you seeing out there? Anything that's kind of the trends, the technologies, things that brands should be taking full advantage of?
So that's great. And here's what it's doing. I would say it's not changing things. It's more accelerating the change. We already knew that this was important. The world was moving more digital. Right now, it's just the can of gasoline on the fire, igniting it, moving things quicker. I mean, web traffic is up because websites are the lifeline that we have to the world. Whether we're trying to get some entertainment, whether we're trying to do business, whether we're trying to connect with friends. So content is going to matter a lot more. Just the web, your website and your storefront is going to matter a lot more. And even that word storefront kind of implies to me kind of a set it and forget it type of mentality. And that's no longer going to be the case. People will constantly need to invest and keep things current and keep things moving. So it's going to be a lot more of, I believe, a lot more of really kind of content that's going to sell rather than just kind of spec content. We see that a lot in the manufacturing space. I think there's going to be a more of an embracing of video, more embracing of storytelling that goes on there. Yeah, and it's happening. It's going to happen in a big way. I mean, you could just Google like the importance of websites or what people should be doing. And it's always in the top 10 is invest in your website, invest in your website, invest in your website. And here's another reason why as well is when you're talking about pivoting quickly, how many restaurants, small businesses all of a sudden had to become sort of e-commerce? Sign up here, we'll have this delivered. They had to do this quickly. And that's the importance of having, your web your web foundation in place. So it is going to be accelerating in a lot more and just in a greater speed moving forward.
It's interesting, Pat, that I've seen just in the digital space is like virtual trade shows, where we had all of these trade shows across the country canceled. And the first reaction is, we'll get them next year, right? And it was like the smart, innovative companies said, listen, we have materials, we have new products to launch, we have graphics and brochures and videos and things we were planning to use at the show. Why don't we invite customers or buyers to our website? So I think, even when this, and I hate to use the word when this ends, but as we get back to some normalcy, I think it's going to take people a while to get comfortable with getting back out there. It's not going to be instant where they're like, let's go to trade shows and let's go to this. And they're going to say, I feel much more comfortable in my house interacting with somebody. So, I mean, just the speed of innovation I'm seeing in the digital space is crazy.
Let me piggyback on that. And I think that's a really cool point is I agree with you. I think people are just going to not feel comfortable about leaving. One, I think they're going to be told you can't leave, not because of like a mandatory lockdown. I think companies are going to look at this and go, we just spent 8 weeks at home. You guys haven't missed a beat. We've been conducting here at Ascedia business as usual. Yeah. Really have gone on extremely well. You can't say people aren't going to come in going, this travel and entertainment budget, do we really need that anymore? It's going to get cut.
Yeah.
Because people are going to say, well, we need more marketing. We need more website. It's like, you don't need to get on a plane and fly to Cleveland to meet somebody. Get them on the Zoom conference. You just did this. So, yeah.
It's a great point. I'm kind of glad that you segmented into trade shows because interestingly enough, one of the questions that we got was, it was verbatim, I can't attend a trade show. What do I do to still capture that audience or opportunity that the show is going to provide? And Brian, you kind of got into that as well as Pat. And the reality is, you just have to look at it differently. I know I was on a call this morning with a client who was scheduled to go to a trade show in June, a very big trade show. And those are the types of conversations we're having where, maybe we're not physically going to that trade show, but there still is an audience out there that still needs to get our message and that we can still engage in. So we're looking at different ways different opportunities, different channels to still engage, some of which you guys alluded to. One thing I want to ask both of you, and I want to get your perspective. Pat, you kind of touched on it a little bit, where we're embracing, we're doing business a different way. We're, Ascedia, Celtic, we're still out there. We're helping our clients. We're looking for new clients. Obviously, a lot of sales teams have been grounded because of this. A lot of companies that really are just, their bread and butter is, we send our people out on the road. We fly here, we fly there, we meet with people face to face. That's how we do business. So I guess I want to talk about that a little bit, because I think two things. One is, from a sales perspective, how can I still engage with my customers to kind of conduct business on a day-to-day, but also not lose, some of that, the benefits of just, face to face, which I don't think should be, we never want to forget about, because that's so key in what it is we do. I'd be curious to hear what your perspective is, both of you.
Brian, you want to go first, or do you?
Well, I think, virtual trade shows we talked about might be down the road. I was looking at some of them, they're rudimentary. I don't know if they're quite there yet. What I would do, in one conversation I had, is have a password protected area on your website where you could have some fun, be creative, and invite your customers in and say, you know what, we've got it. We couldn't go to the show this year. We miss you. We have so much we want to share with you. Come into our site, log in, give us your information, and now have this interactive experience. And, have some fun, give swag to people. Maybe if they come in and check things out, you could send them a little goodie box of swag, but have some fun with it, be creative. Everybody's kind of in the same boat. So what I would highly not recommend is to say, well, the trade show got canceled. Better luck next year, fellas, because the smart companies, the smart companies are the ones that are going to be out there and saying, we can connect with people in a different way. We can connect with them through our website, or even just like you said, Zoom, a nice one-on-one call via Zoom. That's the stuff that I'm seeing right now. And hey, don't forget to pick up the phone. Kurt and I were joking about that earlier. The phone is that oldest form of communication in our world. But what's been interesting? I don't get a lot of phone calls when I'm at home. A lot of it's this Zoom, and it's been kind of fun when somebody calls me and says, Brian, it's been a while, man. How are things going? Half hour later, we've had this great touch point. So I've also been encouraging clients. It's like, look at your customer base. Pick 2 a day. When you come in the morning, you have your coffee. Pick 2. How are you doing? What's your biggest, concern right now? How can I be helping you? We're here. We're ready to go. So have that personal contact via phone too. Don't ever forget about that.
Yeah. What do you think?
I think Brian hit on a lot of great points. Let's be honest, guys. It's going to be a recalibration for a lot of people, right? But the fact is, this is the way it's going to be. Mm-hmm. You're going to lose something. I love face to face. We're just not. That's not the game anymore. Okay, so we have to move on. But what do you gain from Zoom? Well, look at us right now. Kurt, I'm in your home. I'm in your office. I'm actually, in some ways, more intimate than I've ever been with you. How do you play off of that all of a sudden, right? So I think people are going to figure it out. It's going to be, and it's going to be a challenge for some, certainly, but it's also opportunities for others. Content's going to matter more. I love the idea of putting stuff behind the gated type, a little bit of a gated community type of thing, or a gated wall to take that certain parts of information. I think that is really, really helpful. This gets back to the website thing as well. That's going to become more dynamic. Instead of just having it static, there's going to be more uploading of videos going, hey, this is Kurt, this is Pat, talking about this new product or so forth. So you get more of a feeling for the overall company that you're dealing with, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So people are going to be evolving, and I really believe it's going to be kind of a digital web play along with the content that's really going to help foster things along. And then, Kurt, you and I have talked about this. There's tools out there right now like Vidyard, where you can embed video into emails that, again, give a little bit more personality, a little bit more feel, a little bit more flavor. And man, of course, the phone, right? Yeah. I think we all forget about that. What's funny is how many people now make Zoom meetings when it could be done just a regular phone call. We did like a month ago, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be Zoom. And before it was just a call.
Well, intimacy is a great word, because, even you're seeing companies that are doing happy hours with customers where, the week before they send something out to their customer's house. Maybe it's a pint glass or something fun.
Exactly.
And it's like, join us on this date. It's going to be our agency and you guys, and let's just have some fun and talk. And so be creative, have some fun with it, and be open-minded to new ways of communicating versus, well, we're just going to sit on the sidelines so we can get back on the plane. We got to be accelerating that thinking a little bit of new ways of communicating with folks.
Yeah. I like, to put a period on this point. I like what both of you are saying. I know both of you, and you both are very, you excel with your people skills. And I think what I'm hearing, and it's great advice for everyone, is I think all of us are learning as we're going. So we're taking the good, the things that we're learning, and we're finding out what works and what doesn't work. And the things that work and we're getting better at as we're becoming better educated in new technologies and different ways of doing business, we're going to keep that. And maybe some things along the way that we didn't care for, we didn't like, those are going to fall by the wayside. But I tend to agree. I think the one advice I would give to anyone is do not forget about the soft skills. Do not forget about your people skills. As important as digital is, find ways to still stay engaged from a personal perspective. And you're right, Pat, you alluded to it, as did you, Brian. The technology is out there to allow you to do both. So turning gears, I want to talk a little bit about public relations and social media, because that's also an area I think that we're seeing some questions come in on, social media. Obviously it's a great way to stay engaged, but also public relations. So Brian, I'm going to start with you. From a public relations perspective, we got a question, and the question really was, how can PR play a role in really continuing to build a brand? And I say build, not just, but it's to build a brand, strengthen a brand during COVID-19. I mean, what advice would you say or would you give in terms of how can PR play a role in strengthening your brand during this time period?
Again, a lot of people, when this first happened, were very sensitive to go out with a strong PR message. They didn't want to seem opportunistic. They didn't want to seem insensitive. But what I always told people is the media still is interested in stories. They're interested in reporting. And I think a lot of times when we reach out to a reporter, you acknowledge the situation first. I hope you're healthy. I hope you're well. We know these are challenging times, but here's a story idea or a product or a person that we think would be really interesting. And it doesn't just have to be, well, I have a thought leadership expert on COVID-19 that I want to talk to you about. It could be simple things like we work with a company and they were donating products to something. And we said, you know what, we should absolutely reach out to the trade and consumer media and let them know about the good things that you're doing in the community. We've worked with companies where they do have thought leadership experts, where it's like, this person's background and expertise is on helping companies recover from difficult times. Boy, that's a great story. So don't be afraid to outreach to the media and say, well, we shouldn't contact them until 3-4 months down the road. Contact them, but do it with respect. Do it understanding that they're under a lot of pressure, and get to the point and make sure that there's editorial quality to it. I mean, as we all know, if you just call up and say, my company's the greatest thing in the world, you want to do a story? I mean, it's not going to work. Try to tie your story into, well, hey, reporter, this is what's going to interest you and your readers or your viewers. We've got good content. We've got good people that we can provide to you. So a lot of our clients are still pushing forward with that.
Brian, let me ask you one more question while we're sticking with PR. From a story perspective, and I like how you said that, this is a great way to still tell our story, share our story. From a newsworthy perspective, or just from the perspective of what's interesting to the editorial folks, I mean, is there room still to kind of push your brand's message or share something that's outside of COVID? I mean, I know that's obviously that's the hot topic right now, as it should be. But are there opportunities outside of that? If there's good content or good story to share, what would what would you say to that?
What we've done with our clients is we've sat down and we say, what is your expertise? And then what we've done is we've either pitched stories or we've developed stories that offer tips. So you know what, XYZ company, and I don't want to name them, but XYZ company offers 6 tips on how to prepare for the upcoming storm season. And that whole article will have good quality content that people will want to consume about, wow, this is very helpful for me as I plan. But of course, there's subtle brand messaging. Brought to you, these tips are brought to you by XYZ company, or we quote somebody from that company, or we subtly bring in a product and say, hey, you know what, this is a great way to prepare having this tool and you should consider it. So absolutely there's subtle ways to build in your branding. But what I would say at this point in time is offer a lot of tips, good suggestions, articles that are going to offer a lot of value at this point, and then subtly brand on the back end.
I'm nodding my head a lot. It's educate and entertain. The brand message will get across. People will connect it. They'll connect it.
What's funny is I just had a conversation with a vendor about that, and we were talking about, well, how many times should we reference the client? And they're like, you know what? If you have great content and if you're a great entertainer, the brand will come along for the ride on the back end of it. And I truly believe in that. But don't be afraid, if you've got a story, especially if it's COVID related in some way, that, you're doing something to help the community, you have a product that can help, you have experts on staff, call up that local station and, share your idea with them. They'll be receptive.
Yeah, let me just piggyback a little bit on that too, because again, in this Kantar study, one of the findings they came back with was that citizens, the community, they are looking toward brands for what to do and kind of signposts about the future. Like, are things safe? So even small things like, hey, here's how we're making our store safe for you. Here's how we're improving this experience for you. And it's usually, for a while, guys, it's probably going to be around the hygiene and safety and type, but that's really, really important. And that's given back to a community. There's a whole lot of messaging there. So the point is, there's a lot of space available to talk about brands in your story. You're going to have to be smart about how you go about it, though, for sure.
And what I would do is get with your agency, hopefully us. If it isn't, what I would do is get with your team and brainstorm ideas and go, hey, did you guys know that we introduced this process in our manufacturing plant that makes it safer for us to work here, or allows it? That's a story. Reporters are looking for that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And that brand can be the people to reassure, not necessarily sell, but to reassure.
Well said.
That's a great point. I heard they were talking about the restaurant business, and obviously that's an industry, when you look at restaurants and bars and hospitality, they've really been hit hard. But the discussion was, how are they going to rebound, and what is it specifically that they're going to have to do differently? And that was one thing that came up. They said that one of the big things is, if you're a restaurant, you've got to communicate overtly, openly, directly, get that message out, what it is you're doing differently. You don't want to go to the bar. People don't want to go to that bar or corner tavern knowing that it's business as usual. What they want to do is go to that corner bar or tavern and get their hamburger and know, hey, they are doing things differently. Look at the new processes that are in place that are communicating how we're staying, cleaner, safer, whatever it might be. So point well made.
When a lot of times we're talking about maybe restaurants, but if you're in manufacturing, supply chain's huge. So if you can be talking a little bit about what you're doing to make sure that product is flowing, you're a vital part of that flowing, and this is how we're doing it. Again, that's just going to reassure your customers, your vendors, and just the community at large that, okay, you know what, there's going to be food on the shelves. There's going to be replacement parts at the auto body place. Supply chain's a huge issue right now. So if you have a story to tell in that area, go for it.
And just what you guys have just touched on too is just harkens back to what we were talking about at the beginning of this. What do you start doing? What do you start working on? How do you start? Well, these are all things. How are we going to start messaging about what we're doing with our supply chain? How are we going to start messaging about what we're doing to make things safer, cleaner, better, different?
Yeah.
Right? These are all things that an organization should be thinking about and executing against.
Absolutely.
Pat, I want to stick with you for a second. I think I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about social media. It's kind of weaved its way into the conversation here and there, but I want to talk about social media briefly. Obviously, it's one of the easiest and fastest ways to get your message out there. We're seeing it take place before our eyes. It's always been that way, but I think now more than ever, we're seeing how information is really moving and accelerating in terms of just sharing what's new in our world. So from a social media perspective, talk a little bit about, yes, what role can it play for all of us or for companies? But, one of the questions we got was, what are we seeing out there that is really working? And what are we seeing maybe that's not working? Are there some examples that you're seeing from brands that you can say, like, you know what, that is a really cool thing. They are on point. They're doing a great thing. Or maybe it's our own companies are doing great things for our clients. Use that as an example. And maybe some things that are not working.
Oh man, what is, I'm gonna struggle for a little bit on specific brands and pointing those out. So maybe you guys could jump in on that.
Just
so
examples.
let me back it up a little bit though and
Sure,
say, how people like should be thinking about social. Let's start there.
Okay.
And this is how I recommend it in terms of everything else is it's not just one part, or just not the thing. It's a part of a whole, right? You have to be thinking about your whole, what you're doing in messaging overall, and how do these channels then fit into that, right? And I mean, it's particularly, I think, helpful right now because at the beginning of this conversation, we talked about don't go dark, right? That's absolutely correct. But somebody may have to say, listen, I'm not going to go forward with that TV ad, or I'm not going to go forward with that digital buy. And we've seen people pull back from that, but they could still create content. Yep. They could still push it out there on the social channels and still use those. I think where people really are going to struggle with things is, again, as we start tipping and as we start moving into, let's start promoting our brands a little bit more. Let's start promoting business a little bit more rather than the empathetic, right? So that little bit of switch back there. I think people are going to come across as too hard hitting too quickly.
Interesting.
Quite honestly, I think they're just going to jump in because, hey, we got to get some business going. But I think they're going to make that leap too quickly. Guys, help me out though. I mean, do you have brands that you've been looking at and saying like who's been really killing it lately?
I could tell you one thing from social media is storytelling and people. And what I mean by that is they're getting away from self-promotion, featuring products, strong call to actions, and what it's become is look at the people, behind our company and the links that they're going to serve you. Here's a story about Joe who's out on the plant. Look at somebody who's working from home. It's very human connecting type of tissue that I think is working the best right now. And again, down the road, we can get more into, hey, we're introducing a new product and this is how great it is. But I think what's really good is that human connective story. The other thing is just the customer service role. I mean, people are driving around or leaving their homes and going, what's open, what's not open? Are they doing curbside delivery, or is this, So I think just telling people, we're here, we're open, call ahead, let us know. So I'm seeing a lot of that kind of just customer service function. And I'll go back to your last point and I'll be quiet, but I think you're right. When this first started happening, it isn't about just do social. I recommended it very much so. I think it's a fast way to connect with your audience. It's a great tool. So we definitely recommended it. We talked about do some videos, get your CEO, get a president, get somebody from the shop floor and do short little videos where you can just tell people about what's going on and how you're pushing forward and how you're there to help people. And I'm not talking Spielberg videos. I'm talking stuff like this. Just very basic video. We talked about picking up the phone already, but even the PR perspective, I think things that you can get moving quickly, Pat, like you said, it's not, hey, we got to ramp up. It's going to take 3 months to get ready for this. It's what can we do now?
And why that's going to work right now is just look at is people are going to have more of an acceptance on, hey, this is good enough, right? Look how many, like, for example, how many shows right now they're just filming it at home. They're doing things from their basement like we're doing. And it's like, I'm looking at this going, well, it's not the same as a studio, but it's fine.
Yeah, it works. And you know what? I mean, to me, it was social media, video, and email really were the big three, what I would say, because that was fast to market, right? It didn't take a lot of time and it was low cost. So for those brands that were looking to maybe scale back a little bit.
Let me hang on one thing, and Kurt, let me bring you into this conversation. And here's a question and just a thought is, one of the points you just made there, Brian, is I think has been a much overlooked element in something that I think people are going to take a closer look at now coming out of this, is your email database. Because that's something I could control, and that's something I can use to message back and let them know, hey, here's where we're at. Here's what's going on. Here's how we're staying clean. Here's what, right?
Absolutely.
Kind of like, yeah. And I think this is going to open people's eyes to saying, hey, that database let's take better care of that. Let's start engaging with that more with good content, right? Not just sending out,
And I would even say thinking about how you're getting those email addresses. So let's clean up our existing list, but then let's also take a look at the funnel. It's like, so if we are getting people in through social media, if we are getting them into our website, how are we collecting that data so that we can market to them in the future? So take a look at those ways people are coming into your company and into your brand.
Right on.
Yeah. Those are all great points, guys. I'm glad video kind of came up too, because we're seeing, obviously, we all know the power of video. We all know performance is much better when you're using video as content. I had a conversation last week with an executive director, and he asked for my opinion on a letter that he was sending to his audience. And I right away just asked him, I said, have you thought about maybe just delivering that message yourself on video versus sending it out as a standard, document? And I think you're right. I think there's something authentic and believable when you see the video like we're doing here, or what you're seeing other companies do. It does not have to be Hollywood. It does not have to be Spielberg, as you say, Brian. Sometimes this is what makes it more believable and raw in a way that can benefit the company. So no doubt we're seeing a lot of changes. So as we wrap up here, I guess I just want to kind of go to each of you, separately, for final thoughts, things that you might just want to leave with our audience, something that's just, on your mind, or just, like I said, just a wrap up. Pat, let's start with you. Any final thoughts?
Yeah. So here's my final thought is, coming out of this, I think brands, corporations, businesses, so forth, are going to want to really look at price and promotion as a way to start jumpstarting things, right? That's the natural way things are going to go. I think coming out of this, brands may want to really think that through and say, what kind of other value adds and add-ons could I provide without slashing rates down to the bottom? Because I think it's going to be very, very difficult to bring them back up. It's going to take a long time. And there's history, especially as we talked about, guys, with the travel space. After the 2008, it was a massive cut on rates. Took some places 10 years to get back to where they were prior to 2008. That's travel. I think packaged goods and so forth. I think this time around, I would encourage and have that thought at least to put on the table. Instead of cutting prices, what can we do to add value to the equation?
That is wonderful. That's a great message. From my standpoint, and I know people are so sick of it around here, I always say it, don't go dark, stay proactive, even if it's minimal, even if it's just, we got a few emails out to our customers. Think about it too. Employees are separated. What are you doing to communicate with your employees? On our end, we send an update every Friday to let them know what's going on. We've sent some things in the mail just to have some fun and give them something to open up at their home. But I would say don't go dark. I would say start thinking about as we come out of this. And the other thing is stay positive. I know that this is a scary time. We all get it. But we're all in it together. And I know that's a cliche to a certain extent, but the reality is everybody's going through the same thing. So talk to people, get out of your house, engage in conversations, call us up, ask a question. Hey, I've been thinking about this or that. Go to our websites. I know for us at CelticInc.com, we've got blog posts that offer recommendations on how to make it through this. We've been posting a lot of good content. So those are just rapid fire, I guess, closing comments, but stay positive, stay proactive. And hey, give us a call if you have any questions or just want to kick around ideas.
Yeah, those are two great points. And if I could, I guess my final thought, if I could just jump in here, I would say service. Let your audiences know, whether it's your employees or your clients, let them know you love them. Because I think now more than ever, this is such a great opportunity to really, earn your stripes or your keep, if you will, because I think that's what people are going to remember. It's easier to really look great when things are kind of more normal, if you will. But right now, everyone's kind of looking for answers. Everyone needs a lifeline. Everyone needs help. And I think the message we've been really pushing out our agency too is stay in front of your clients. Let them know you're there. Let them know you're there to help them, whatever it is they need. it's so appreciative right now. It's just going to help that relationship so much better and make it stronger. And after all, that's what this is really about. It's about building relationships. So,
and it's a manufacturer with their vendors. It's travel tours with their, no matter what industry you're in, it's all the same.
Yeah,
for sure.
So, well, guys, first of all, I want to thank both of you, Brian and Pat. This has been great. Your perspectives were awesome. And I will go ahead and say, too, as we say in our industry, if the network allows us or the powers that be allow us to renew this show of ours, we'd love to come back and entertain some more questions. But to all of you out there, thank you for watching, sharing, liking. And if you have questions, contact us. We'd love to hear from you and help you out however we possibly can. So with that, we're going to say goodbye and we're going to say thank you. Have a good night.
Sláinte.